What's up, fungal associates? Welcome to Completely Arbortrary. It's the podcast about trees and other related topics. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Alex Crowson. And per usual, over there on the great green couch on the GGC, we got a JGC.
Hey there. My actual middle name is Casey.
JCC.
Not that.
Hi, Casey.
Hey, Alex.
This is our first episode back from Inside Sprout.
Right, it is.
That was a fun one.
That was a good one, and it also did coincide with just an emotional week and a half or two for me personally.
Big time, yeah.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you. So many of you out there in the world reached out on Instagram. I said I'm having a rough emotional day.
Yeah.
I got such a lovely response from all the fungal associates.
That's great.
My good friends, family. It was really nice. It really felt good.
Oh, lovely. Well,
Yeah.
Casey, speaking of shouting out fungal associates, you found something right before we started recording.
I did, yes.
And I said, save it for the pod, my man.
Exactly. It was very much a hold on, let me start recording.
We know that we have a lot of international fans, just people who don't live in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And you started looking through our analytics on our publishing platform, which tells you who listens and where.
Precisely.
And from whence. So let's give let's name a few countries. And if you hear your country, you win a point.
Yeah, you shout it out. Just yell, you hoop wherever you're at. Well, we have so many new listeners that are coming from South America.
Hell yeah.
A significant number of Africa, and literally almost every single other country in the whole world.
Wow.
I think it doesn't appear that we have a whole lot in Kazakhstan.
South America, parts of Africa, and every other country.
Now there's like the Central Asian steppe. We don't have a whole lot there.
Okay, Mongolia.
We don't have a lot in kind of the Northern Sahara Africa.
Okay.
But almost everywhere else, our numbers are looking good. Okay,
This
great.
means big money for Casey and Alex.
Exactly. Now, do you guys want to know how big that is? Well, we have 21 of you in Brazil.
Okay.
Thank you, Brazil.
Shout out Brazil. I thought you were going to say we have $21 in our bank account.
No. We have, according to this, 21 downloads in Brazil.
Okay.
We have 5 in Tanzania. 64 South Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, so now we got people in Spanish-speaking countries that speak languages that have nothing to do with Europe, and they're actually giving us a listen.
And how about this? To all of those listeners, I say, hola.
I
speak a little Spanish.
That was really good. Your accent, I honestly thought you were Argentinian.
Well, I can turn it on like that, Case.
You really can, man. That's incredible.
Casey, let's talk trees.
All right, Alex, I like where your head's at here. This is really inspiring to me.
This week, we're talking about the Austrian black pine.
That's right, we are.
And we have to do this after a quick break. Some of those aforementioned ads.
Yeah. Speaking of everybody that listens, don't turn that dial.
Please don't skip the ads. We'll be right back with Austrian black pine here on Completely Arbortrary. Welcome back to Completely Arbortrary. Casey needed a moment. Are you fine now?
I am fine now, but I also just wanted to quickly interject. Now that you listen to the ads, first off, thank you. Second off, if you don't want to listen to those ads, remember, you can always sign up for our Supercast.
That's right.
We had that opportunity, and I didn't want to let it pass out.
That's great, Casey. I was almost mad at you, but I feel good now.
Okay, thank you.
Arbitrarypod.supercast.com. That's where you become a premium member of the podcast and really support the podcast. That is the best way to support the podcast.
That's right. And you get ad-free listens, so you don't even have to listen to any of these things anymore. Not to mention you get the Cone Club, you get to get some extra bonus episodes. You get all the cool stuff that you ever want. Ask us all the questions in the world.
You get the microwave. You get the stereo set.
Exactly.
You get the Completely Arbortrary microplane.
We have one, seriously. And it even has little bits of our own fingers that we've shaved off while grating garlic.
That's right.
That's right.
Casey, let's imagine as we do every episode that you and I were walking through Austria.
Oh.
Maybe a little Alp action. And we come across some Austrian black pines. Casey, let's ID this tree.
All right, Alex, I'm really glad to do this. This is a tree that even if you're not walking through the Alps or anywhere in Europe, you'll probably be familiar with this tree, especially if you're in the United States. As I've noted, we have literally a dozen listeners in other countries.
That's right.
And you may not see this one if you're in a tropical area, but it is very much a horticultural darling.
Oh.
It is planted all throughout the United States very commonly, especially here in the Pacific Northwest. And it is a 2-needle pine.
Oh, wow.
And I covered this in my recent book, which of course I bring up every time for whatever good reason there is.
Got ahead of me there.
Yes,
Damn.
I'm sorry, Alex. I'm sorry. But I think in that I noted that it is the most common tree anywhere in our region.
Wow.
In terms of it being, I should say, an
no
ornamental tree.
Wow.
Excuse me.
Wow.
I think that was the right number of, or right level of enthusiasm, Alex.
That's too much.
So it's just planted all over the place.
Okay.
And it grows natively all throughout the forests in Europe. It's one of the most widespread, very similar to the Scots pine.
Okay. I will say in terms of its popularity and its abundance,
Yeah.
I Googled it, not knowing what to expect. I Googled the tree.
Yeah.
I saw a picture and I went, oh, yeah.
You've seen it a dozen
know
times.
this tree, yeah.
So this is a pine tree. It grows like a pine tree,
Yeah.
which is generally with an excurrent habit, which means it has that very central main leader with branches that come off, creating a somewhat triangular appearance.
Yeah.
But if you let this one grow, it will also start to create a really nice rounded crown. So essentially, it slows down as it gets to its height, the highest point, and the branches along the side continue to grow up and outwards. So it kind of creates a rounded top with big, wide spreading branches. So pyramidal to rounded crown. That's the way I describe it.
Round crown, pyramid base.
Yeah, that's right. And it generally does not get much taller than about 145 feet.
All right.
So, not a gigantic tree. It's not going to blow you away unless it's growing, I don't know, really, 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 really old. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
It also gets, I don't know, maybe about 6 feet in diameter is one of the biggest ones. But famously, this has been one of the most useful trees in European history because it is their primary timber tree.
Okay.
Has been for a long time, but also with the Scots pine and a couple other different species.
In the UK, you said?
All throughout Europe as well.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So if I said UK, I meant Europe.
You probably said Europe.
Okay, fabulous.
Okay, cool.
So because of that, it's very likely that some of the biggest, oldest ones probably were cut down in the, however long ago. It's just like trees in Japan. Old Japanese trees are really rare and very much obviously gigantic and old, whereas the whole island at one point was probably filled with those kind of ancient wild trees, but over time they just get used and logged with the people living there and using their resources and things.
Okay. So what is the wood good? I mean, is the wood just an all-purpose flower of wood?
It's exactly what it is.
Okay.
You can do literally anything with it. It's the pine tree that you build things with. So just the way we think of pine and fir in the Pacific Northwest or in the United States is that's our building tree wood.
Yeah.
That's what this one is.
Okay.
It's the useful, grow out in the forest, grow in the mountains, go cut that down, create yourself a house.
Great. Well, let's talk needles, Case.
2-needle pine, baby.
Cool.
2-needle pine, and these needles are important to note because they're dark green. Scots pine is bluish green, and they're a little bit shorter.
Okay.
So ours grow to about maybe 6 inches at most, and I mean at most. Most of the time, they're about 4 to 5 inches long. They are 2 per pair, which is obvious because
it's a nice way
pair.
of looking at it.
Ah, jeez. Anyway, they are a very nice dark green, and they persist about 4 to 8 years. So you can get these really kind of dense canopies with old needles growing very far down the stem.
Okay.
As opposed to other trees like, say, the Jeffrey pine, where they keep their needles for very few years. Jeffrey and ponderosa, between 3 and 4-ish most of the time. So their needles are usually kind of puffs at the end of their twigs. Rather than this, they look a little bit more hairy, so the canopy's a little bit more full overall.
Wow.
So that's a great way to tell. They also are somewhat sharp to the touch, and they tend to not really twist. So if you remember way back when we talked about Pinus contorta, the shore pine,
Okay.
also another 2-needle pine, and those needles each individual needle rotates about 180 degrees as it grows out.
They kind of corkscrew each other?
Exactly. They're kind of, no, each individual one does it themselves. They're not like corkscrewed around each other.
Okay.
It's just like one kind of goes out and corkscrews a little bit, the other kind of grows out and corkscrews a little bit.
Gotcha.
This, they don't do that. They will tend to be very much straight. Now, they may curve, but they're not going to be very obviously rotated, like someone took each end and just went and twisted it, like a piece of bread or something.
Interesting.
The other thing is that it does not have really bright orange bark the way a Scots pine does.
Okay.
I'm saying all these things.
This whole idea is based
reference.
around the fact that it looks very much like a Scots pine.
It really is, and I'm sorry about that, but that is how my brain has like conceptualized this tree for I think a decade.
That's fine.
Where I'm like, okay, what are the differences between this and that? And its bark is rather our Pinus nigra, which is the Austrian black pine. It has gray bark with orange only in the fissures.
Okay.
Gets very kind of scaly and develops these big, thick ridges and these furrows in between. So it looks like, wow, that's a robust kind of bark. And you go all the way up to the very tip of the stem or out to the ends of the branches. They're the same kind of dark gray color.
Okay.
They are not bright orange and flaky. So keep this in mind.
Okay.
The other reason I should say I'm bringing this up is because the other most common tree in the Pacific Northwest that you would expect to see is the Scots pine. It matches this almost toe to tip, except for some very particular things. Blue-green needles that have that rotation, just like the Pinus contorta, the shore pine. The bark is really orange, very vibrantly so, at the tips of the smaller stems and twigs. Okay. So this one does not. And famously, it has pine cones.
It sure does.
Alex, I actually happen to have a few pine cones here.
Wow. Casey just pulled them out of his butt.
Why don't you take a look at this?
Ew, I don't want to touch it.
Yeah, that's where I store them, man.
You got to be careful putting that in or taking it out.
You do. You really do. And sometimes that's just, all part of the fun.
And no armed umbos.
No armed umbos, yeah. So you're not going to scrape yourself. It's very nice.
This is just a great pine cone.
This is, I think, the, just straight up pine cone.
We've said the same. We've said similar about Ponderosa.
Yes.
But I think this takes it.
Yeah, you think
because
so?
Because of the size.
This one is even more piney conier.
Yeah, I think it's just the size, really.
Well, describe the size to us.
Oh, God. An egg?
Okay, yes, it's egg-shaped. I would say it's the size of about a goose egg. So maybe 2.5 inches tall.
I'm trying cracking. Or large.
Get anything in there?
A large egg.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Goose is fine.
This is... Okay, yeah, man. I'm glad I'm not that chicken.
Okay, let's look up the sizes of different eggs.
You know what? Let's just ask Google here. Who's right?
I love this. I love this pine cone.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's like a nice kind of light tannish gray, and then on the inside, the cone scales on the bottom side. And I should note, the bottom side is the abaxial side.
Okay.
As opposed,
I'm going to remember that.
You better. Actually, I still can't remember that. As opposed to the top side, which is the adaxial.
Oh, ad.
Yes,
okay.
ab and adaxial.
Alrighty.
So I think I got that right. I'm pretty sure. I confuse it so often. So the, ab is the underside, which is the side facing. Okay, I got that right.
Casey. So. Yellow card.
Jesus, sorry. I gotta stay focused.
Why haven't we done this before? In terms that you understand, because you're a soccerman.
Yeah, give me a yellow card.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to explain why I thought that was a good thing to do. Then I said, Casey, no, you got a yellow card. You got to keep going.
I will red card you so fast, mister.
I don't want to get red carded. That means I have to get off and I can't come back for the next game.
Oh, my God. Well, I'm officially getting arbitrary red and yellow cards made.
Dude. Oh, man, that's good. So underneath the scales, as the cones fully open up, you'll notice that it's very dark black.
Yeah.
And then there's this band of like orange between the umbo, or rather the apophysis, that end of the scale. When the cone is closed, the exposed section.
Yeah.
Right beneath that, when it's open, this beautiful,
it's like a collar of orange.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it's just this dark black.
It's very Halloween-y.
It really is, yeah. And so these are just, I think they're so quintessential, these cones. They just are so beautiful, and so they're just, I think you're right. I think this takes the cake more than a ponderosa pine. And I think it takes the cake more because the ponderosa pine loses some scales at the very base, at that little stem part there.
Oh, not this one.
And they reflex backwards. So you don't actually get to see something that's so famous about pine cones in particular, which is the spiral pattern underneath that cone.
And there's kind of like an eyeball in the middle.
There is. Sometimes I actually have noticed that very specifically.
Wow, this has tripped me out, man.
Yeah, isn't it cool?
I shouldn't have taken all that acid.
I know, but honestly, I kind of dig that you did, man. Now, the reason, Alex, that we are covering this tree today has everything to do with that spiral pattern.
No kidding.
Right underneath.
What is that called?
Well, that is called Phyllotaxis.
Phyllotaxis.
That's right, Alex.
Okay.
Now, Phyllotaxis means the way that different parts are arranged along a central axis.
Taxis, like organization, taxonomic.
Nope.
Taxonomy.
Organization, yes. So in that case,
taxonomy is
correct.
an organization.
Yes. Sorry, you said
organization.
You said taxes, and I was like, I don't think it has much to do with taxes.
You also have to organize your taxes. Is it not tax day today?
Fine. I will give it to you. It is tax day.
I wasn't trying to read anger.
I wasn't trying to. Well, your intentions, Alex, don't really matter.
Phyllotaxis.
Yes, it is the classification of leaves on a plant stem.
Okay.
Which is why I had to ask the experts here. Because these are not technically leaves. These are scales on a cone.
Sure. Casey rolled his eyes.
It's all part and parcel of the same thing.
Yeah.
Because effectively speaking, a cone is just a modified series of leaves and stuff.
Man.
Like, we can really go back.
Sure.
I'm going to make that argument right now because this is one of the most commonly used examples of Phyllotaxis.
Oh.
The bottom of the cone scale.
Of this particular cone.
Not this particular cone.
Okay.
But while I was thinking what tree we're going to be doing as I was doing all my research to talk about Phyllotaxis, I ended up saying, well, I would love to cover a certain kind of tree that does this kind of thing. Maybe I should do that kind of thing. Then I realized there is one of my favorite places to go and do all sorts of everything in terms of trees is the Oregon State Landscape Plants website.
Yes.
And one of the very first times I was ever introduced to this idea in kind of a how do you identify plants kind of way is looking at the base of this tree cone compared to a very similar one called Pinus thunbergii, which you may recall we covered when we talked about bonsais. This is the Japanese black pine.
Wow.
As opposed to the Austrian black pine.
That memory is already in my grave.
Oh, well, you pull it out.
Waiting for me.
Pull it out. So mainly, there's a photo, and if you go to our website, it's when you click on the how do I identify this tree, all that kind of thing, that this is on there, and it shows the bottom of this cone compared to Pinus thunbergii. And namely, Pinus nigra has a really beautiful, obvious spiral pattern underneath. And on Pinus thunbergii, it's just a little bit less obvious. It looks a little bit more abstract. It's not quite as clear. The cones don't actually open up quite as much, so they're kind of like at a weird angle. So when you're looking at the base, you're like, okay, I can see the difference because one, really super obvious, the one a little less obvious. So then I was like, boom, that's the tree we haven't covered. We're doing Pinus nigra.
Hell yeah.
Also, everyone's familiar with this tree. It's literally everywhere. I was in Bend this last weekend. I saw dozens all over the place.
Okay.
So they are super common. So everyone's probably has experience and can go outside, pick up this cone, and look at the bottom, and you'll know what we're talking about today.
There you go. Wow. In the real world. Kate,
in the real world.
I want to mention one last thing about this cone before we move on.
Please.
And I want to see if your cone over there, wait, Casey's holding a cone, I'm holding a cone.
Yes, and I also have at least several others.
My cone has a bit of a bend. Like it looks like a dolphin coming out of the water. Like, whoop, like
yeah,
that.
totally.
Does yours have that?
Mine does also.
Okay,
yes.
confirmed that these cones have a little bit of a bend.
They sometimes do, sometimes they don't, sometimes they do.
It's tasteful.
Yeah, I'm glad you think so. So, Alex, Phyllotaxis, the system of organization of a leaf.
So when you say this plant is oppositely arranged or this plant is alternately arranged.
That's the right one, yeah. Okay. Exactly.
Does this go down to pinnate and palmate?
No, it doesn't quite go there. Is that
considered that? Okay.
No. This is how those pinnate and palmate leaves would be attached to the stem.
On the stem, okay.
And how that is essentially done. So that is, those are the first two of essentially 5 main ways of organizing this. Like saying, okay, how do plants have their leaves arranged? And there's opposite, alternate, and then there's decussate.
Oh, yeah.
You remember decussate? So do you remember what it means?
No, absolutely not.
Well, essentially, it's like you have leaves that are in opposite pairs, but they are offset by 90 degrees as you go down the twig.
Oh, okay.
So when you look down the tip of the twig, it looks like an X or a plus sign.
Yes.
So on cypresses, true cypresses, you can see this really clearly.
Totally, okay.
Especially like the Arizona cypress. That's a great example.
I forgot that those were leaves, but they are.
There you go.
Yep.
So then the other is whorled, which means you have all of the individual stems or leaves coming out from essentially one spot, or what appears to be one spot along the stem. So that would be a node. So there's a bunch of other things that do the same thing. Flowers are whorled most of the time. So if you see petals coming out, they're all coming out from one spot. So like if it's a cherry tree, those are all whorled petals.
Roses?
Roses, yeah. But only, this would be more specifically just the normal roses, the ones that have 5 petals, not like the double flowered fancy ones you buy somewhere else. All right. And then the last one is spiraled, which is really the same as alternate. But instead of being left, right, this is like at different degrees up the stem.
Like the stairway along a medieval tower.
Precisely, Alex.
Yay.
Now.
Can I have a treat?
You may have a treat. Here's another cone.
Oh, great.
Isn't that the treat you wanted?
I got it coming out of my ears.
So, speaking of spiraled arrangement, Alex.
Wow. Was that the first time you've ever used that transition?
It must be, certainly. So people have noticed that kind of spiral arrangement, the same as the bottom of each one of these cones, in so many different aspects of plants. Now, if anyone out there looks up Phyllotaxis and you go to the Wikipedia page, almost every time, the first thing you're going to see are some weird succulents.
Oh, sure.
That look like, I don't even know the species. They're like some weird agave or like some crazy kind of thing that grows down in the deserts of South America or South Africa or something like that.
Yeah.
And they create these spiral patterns that your eyes immediately see and you're like, whoa, like they're mesmerizing, right?
Yes, they're amazing, actually.
Now, if you were to calculate some things about those spiral patterns, you would start to find that those patterns do some really interesting things, and they are the same across so many different plant and natural things that you're like, wait a second, something's going on
It's
here.
the blueprint for like life, man.
Oh, dude. All right, now we're getting somewhere. I
didn't know where I was going with that sentence.
Yeah, I think you went to the exact right place.
Good.
Except other people have done that, and they were mathematicians, and they insisted to keep going.
Yeah, so is this can I guess one of the names here?
You may.
Fibonacci.
Fibonacci, baby.
Okay, I know of the Fibonacci spiral.
Ooh, tell us about the Fibonacci spiral.
Okay, well, I know that it exists.
All right.
What else do you want to know?
And pass to you.
Casey, you take over.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, so generally speaking, you can find that if you look at how plants spiral their leaves up the stem, how cone scales are spiraled up that main axis, how sunflower seeds are spiraled inside of the sunflower, on and on and on. Each one of those spirals will be in a number that is a Fibonacci number.
Okay.
Now, are you familiar with Fibonacci numbers or the sequence that is called the Fibonacci sequence?
Yes.
What is it?
Interesting you should ask. Let me see.
Let me quickly use my familiarity with it. And
it's been so long since I learned it at Harvard.
yes, it has been a long time.
Okay,
Your Harvard days were so long ago.
I was lampooning from here to there. All right, so this is 0 plus 1 equals 1.
Okay.
Plus 2 equals 3.
Okay.
Plus 5 equals 8.
Okay, so how are you getting to these?
I'm reading it off a meme.
Oh, God.
not a meme. It's an image on Google.
It's an image on Google. It's not. It's hardly a meme.
Well, you're adding the previous number with the new number.
Precisely. Okay, that's what I was hoping you're gonna get at. So you have 0 plus the next number, which you have to just start somewhere. So you just say add 1, right? So you have 1. Then that creates 1. So now 1 is the third number. So you add the third number to the second number. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 becomes the fourth number. So on and so forth. You end up creating a sequence that goes 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89, 144, so on and so on and so on and so on and so on.
Is that exponential?
It is not. It is linear.
It's consistent.
It is very consistent,
Okay.
yes. So if you were to take any of those numbers and divide it by the number just behind it.
Divide it, okay.
So you have 141 divided by 89. You would get something close to 1.618.
Wow.
Now, that is a ratio. Now, none of these numbers will actually meet that precisely because that number, that ratio, goes on forever. 1.618, so on and so forth into infinity. Nobody has ever found the end of it. It is an irrational number, which means it cannot be divided by anything but itself in 1. Weird. I think. No, that's a prime number. Well, God. I need to put a quick caveat right here. I've read a whole book about this, and this is probably one of the most confusing subjects I've ever covered on this podcast.
I think I feel.
Yeah, I know. You're going to be sitting here having a great time.
I still have trauma memories from 4th grade long division.
Oh, I thought you were going to say I still have trauma memories from like learning about how flowers develop. I'm like, I'm sorry, man.
I'm just trying to talk about trees, man.
You're right. Okay, sorry.
Math, I can't escape it.
You really can't.
It's like a slasher villain.
Yes, you open the door and there it comes through the mirror. You're like, oh my God, 1.1618. 1.618. Anyway. So the thing is,
oh my God.
Each time you do it, so 2 divided by 1, 3 divided by 2, 5 divided by 3, 8 divided by 5, they essentially are like a pendulum that's slowing down. So it swings one way wildly, then it swings the other way, then it swings slowly, but a little bit less the other way, then a little bit less the other way, a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less. And it's going towards stopping.
Okay.
Which means it's essentially getting closer and closer and closer towards 1.618, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that number's called phi. I've always pronounced it phi, but apparently it's phi.
Phi.
P-H-I.
The 1.6.
Exactly. It's just they gave a Greek number to this.
They couldn't have picked something. We got pi, we got phi.
True, yeah, but pi is already something. So now phi is a different thing.
Well,
So it's just
why
this
not call
number.
it Jeffrey or something?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think it's because they're trying to honor this guy named Euclid who kind of came up with this, came up with geometry like this. It's called the extreme and mean ratio. It's another term that Euclid came up with.
I'll say you were a brave man bringing me math on our first episode back after a break.
After an emotional break.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
What are you trying to do to me?
Well, I'm trying to get rid of all emotion. This is strictly mathematics, man. No, nothing at all.
Yeah, I guess so.
So essentially, that ratio is the golden ratio, 1.618.
Sure, yeah.
Now, the golden ratio, everyone's like, well, what the hell is the golden ratio? The easiest way to describe it is it's the diagonal from a pentagon. So you take a pentagon and then you cut it in half and you have a diagonal, like wherever those corners are. You take that diagonal and you take it straight across. You end up getting this number, and you can create a golden rectangle. Now, for those of you who are like, well, what the hell is a golden rectangle? It's essentially a rectangle where you have a line cut that makes one part of that into a square, and the other part of it is a smaller rectangle.
Okay.
And that, the ratio between the side that you just cut in half, so let's say it's the long side of a rectangle, but you go 1.618% over. You go to that ratio, you draw that line. Now you take the small section and the big section, they are in that ratio. Let me give you a better example. If you could quickly just, everyone, Google the golden rectangle and then click on the very lovely Wikipedia page. This is me saving myself from fucking explaining this. So of that rectangle, the entire length at the bottom is A plus B.
Got it.
The sides on the left and the right are of length A. And then if you take that same length A and you put it across the top and then you draw a line to create a square on one side of this triangle, B is the other side. A and B are in the golden ratio. Now, if you continue to draw that same pattern, and now you split the smaller rectangle again into a square and a smaller rectangle, and then again into a square and smaller rectangle, you will get that famous drawing of all the squares and rectangles with a spiral that comes out that looks like a nautilus shell. That's on all of the things where everyone's like, everything's connected in nature and math and all this stuff. This is like the quintessential like Fibonacci sequence of like nature and math. Somehow it's all natural and connected and real, and oh my God, the whole world is like this. If you guys ever want to find something that blows your shit, you need to
call this number.
Thanks for that sound, Alex. You really didn't help me out there with the intensity I was trying to get at.
For a good time, call.
For a good time, call. Go read the golden ratio. So the golden ratio is essentially the ratio of one section of a thing to the other section of the thing versus the whole length of those things put together.
Okay.
So you can do that with a circle made up of 360 degrees. You can say, okay, I'm going to multiply that by this ratio, and you're going to get approximately 222.5 degrees versus 137.5 degrees.
Okay.
If you then are looking at a plant and you're trying to figure out how all of its leaves and petals and everything are arranged along the spiral that it creates, they generally, if it's a spiral pattern, they're at about 137.5 degrees.
Wow.
In fact, you look at almost every single species in the pine family, you will find something very similar to this same exact ratio. So the question that has bothered so many people is, A, if you go read that book, you'll find out that this ratio is found everywhere. And I mean like everywhere.
Yeah.
Like to a point where as you're reading, you're getting a little suspicious.
Sure.
Which is why if you go into the notes that I took for this, Alex, you'll see that I just repeated this number over and over and over and over and over. Like I was feeling like I was living in Jim Carrey's movie 23. Do you remember that movie?
I've never saw it.
Oh, dude, it's like, so ridiculous.
I was like, not my Dumb and Dumber. I'm not watching him in a drama film. Are you fucking kidding me?
It's essentially he finds the number 23 everywhere and goes absolutely insane.
He draws it all over his face.
Exactly. He's like all these things. He's like adding all this stuff up, and it's like this grand conspiracy and all this. It feels like it's on that level, Alex.
Okay.
But science has done a little bit of work on this. They've essentially said this ratio is unique for one particular reason. Because it is a number that doesn't repeat itself, so you can't just like divide something and get easily this number. They're all like, it's so hard to explain because I'm not a mathematician, so I have to say, everyone go read this book. But suffice it to say, Alex, this ratio, if you follow it, nothing will just perfectly cover itself in a spiral. Let me give you a counterexample I think will make this clear. If you say, okay, I am going to repeat my pattern of, I have 360 degrees, I'm spiraling up this stem. How exactly do I avoid having one leaf shade over another leaf? Because if you do it at, say, 5 petals, then you are going every multiples of 5. So by the time you scale up and get to the 6th one, your leaf is now covering the first leaf.
I see.
So if you're trying to maximize how much sun you're getting, you want to minimize how much overlap you have over the distance of how fast you're growing. The node, so how long your stem is growing.
Yeah.
If it's longer, this becomes less of an issue. But if it's just growing kind of, normally short, you could be shading out all your other leaves.
Sure.
So what happened is people are like, okay, are plants doing this on purpose? Are they like, did this evolve and like find its way?
Sure.
So that now, essentially with this certain ratio, none of those leaves, if you set it out at the ratio of the golden ratio, you will never have a leaf that perfectly 100% blocks another leaf.
Wow.
There's always going to be just a little bit off.
So not even a leaf 20 feet down the stem.
Yes. That's the thing about the golden ratio, about that particular number.
Wow.
Is that it will never repeat itself. Ad infinitum.
Wow.
It will get extremely close, but it will never actually do it.
Sure. Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Isn't that wild?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, what is it? I guess I mean, I'm a expert, obviously, on all this stuff.
Yeah, you are.
So
I know. That's why I want to bring it up too.
I would say evolution, just like finely tuning something.
Yeah.
Until it is like approaching perfect. And then they were like, it works pretty good. My descendants will do it, even the ones that
It will be perfect.
I'm not related to, like.
Yeah. Now, conceivably, that is the case. But what throws that off for everyone else is that things that aren't necessarily living also follow this pattern. And so, like, a nautilus shell is a great example.
Oh.
Technically, it is alive and it is produced by a living thing, but it still creates that same logarithmic spiral, which is essentially that spiral we talked about with the squares and the rectangles. That is a logarithmic spiral where the distance between the two parts of the spiral increase, but the angle of the spiral does not.
Is it possible that this is just like an Earth thing?
I don't know. We haven't found anything else alive to measure. Or dead, I guess.
No, I don't mean exclusive to Earth.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like, is that just the way life grows here?
Now that I think is so great of you to ask, Alex. Yes.
Yeah.
That is, I think, what the general consensus is.
Okay.
Where it really comes down to energy, forces, and ultimately the way that kind of entropy works and the way that all these things move together. So apparently everyone's thought this is like a real thing. It's super important for like energy and the way the world works and all these crazy things. And like, it's not really, like, architecturally speaking, it doesn't really like make something wild and beautiful.
Sure. It's not like the key to something.
Now, they have noticed if you generally set things up at about that ratio, it feels really comfortable. So in terms of like maybe interior design or something, it does have its certain like, yeah, actually that's nice.
Interesting.
So why that is, pretty unexplainable. But the thing that they did explain is that if you were to take some physicists did this really interesting experiment, they had like essentially a circular dish. And they dropped a magnetic bit in the middle, and then they dropped another one right next to it. Those two magnetic bits start to push away from each other. Then you drop another one, and that one starts to push away from the other two, but it pushes away from the one that's a little bit closer a little bit more. So essentially, the closer that those two little magnetic bits are together, the more they push apart.
Okay.
But as soon as it gets more apart from that one, then the other one starts to exert some force on it and push it away again. And then you add another thing to it, and then that gets pushed out. Then you add another thing. So it's slowly, essentially, the individual bits are moving away from the other bits in a way that goes towards the least energetic area, where you have forces pushing you this way and you have forces pushing you that way.
Yeah.
So you end up going over here. And then you add in more of those things. And they found as they did that and just kept adding more of these little bits that the spiral arrangement of the Fibonacci sequence appeared.
Oh my God.
Exactly. So if we're looking at a plant, this comes down to the very, very tip of the growth in the meristem.
Yeah.
So if you imagine those individual bits being, instead of magnetic bits, they are concentrations of auxin, which is that hormone that does so many fabulously interesting things, right? So as that little growing tip is growing up, the cells are basically just reproducing themselves. They're splitting apart and they're creating new cells.
Okay.
But they are not differentiating. They're not becoming anything other than essentially these, for lack of a better term, stem cells. So as they kind of move away, auxin is getting created. And auxin gets created at different concentrations based on where the last leaf was started to create. It's essentially this miniature teeny tiny bulge on the side of this little meristem that's growing up. So that little bulge pushes out this direction and becomes a new leaf. Then there's another leaf below. There's another leaf kind of starting over here. You have this very, very teeny tiny tight spiral starting to develop, because essentially where there's not a lot of auxin, compared to over here and over here and over here, as these concentrations start to like self-organize, you get certain concentrations in certain places, just like those little drips or those little bits of magnetic stuff.
Weird.
So they end up pushing themselves out in terms of where's the least energy, where's the concentration, what's the flux, and there are way better people to explain this. But it ultimately boils down to the fact that it kind of appears as the path of least resistance.
Sure.
Where all the forces and all the individual concentrations line up, and it happens to be at this same exact Fibonacci-esque sequence.
Yeah, interesting.
So when we're looking at the bottom of a pine cone, it's the same thing because each one of those scales is essentially a modified leaf, or it's getting built and put on in the same sort of fashion as a leaf would have, as this little kind of node, this bulge of a growing stem that ends up getting pushed out.
Yeah. Interesting.
And then you get it. Then you get that same pattern. So does this happen? Is this just an earth thing, like you asked?
Yeah.
It really kind of is. Like it's the natural order that develops while everything else is pushing at everything all at once in every direction all at the same time.
It's just a combination of our gravity and our electromagnetic poles and shit.
Yeah, I don't know if it's quite that far, but yeah, why not?
Why not, man?
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking this whole time.
Okay, yeah.
It was like the conditions on Earth
Yes.
just make this happen over and over.
I suppose, yeah, it must be. I'm sure that at one level, like if you really dial it down, I'm sure that all has something to do with it. Like, would this all grow the same in zero gravity,
Yeah.
Who knows? I'm not sure.
Or on Mars or something.
Yeah.
Here's my other theory. We are all designed and created by aliens. And this alien designer found one pattern that they really liked. And they just kept copying and pasting for so many different things.
Kind of like me doing 137.5, 137.5.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, I really need a new asset. I could just load up the spiral. And everybody's like, okay.
They woke up a little hungover. They're like, I really don't want to change this. I'm just going to repeat this one over and over. That's going to be a planet of 1.375. Let's just move on.
The rest of the team is like
137.5. Excuse me.
He's fucking obsessed with that spiral. He keeps using it all over the place.
It's really annoying.
Someday they're going to notice.
Someday they're going to notice. We noticed. It's everywhere. So,
all right, Case. Interesting.
There's one last thing that I love.
Oh, sure.
Which is fascinating to me.
Okay.
If you counted...
Here's a clap fact.
Here's a quick clap fact. So...
That's the stinger.
It is, yeah. Thank you, guys. So if you look at the bottom, let me grab a cone.
Casey's grabbing one of the other cones.
If you look on the bottom, you will notice that all of those little scales on this cone, they all spiral out. But it's kind of like, okay, there's one spiral. Okay, there's another spiral. Okay, there's another spiral. They all move out. But there's not just one spiral. Like it doesn't actually do one complete rotation, right?
It's like a pinwheel of spirals.
Yes, exactly. Now, if you were to count the number of spirals that are going, let's say, clockwise, so going kind of to the right. So they start in one place and they curve off towards the right.
Can I guess?
Yes.
7.
No. It was a good guess. I mean, it was a fine guess.
Higher or lower?
It is, well, I mean, it could be anything, but generally it would be 1 higher.
8.
8 is a Fibonacci number.
Oh, sure.
Now, if you notice and you kind of adjust your eyes, you will also see that there is a spiral pattern going the opposite direction, to the left.
Oh, wow.
Guess how many there are going the opposite direction?
8.
13.
Fuck.
The adjacent Fibonacci number.
Okay.
So there's always a Fibonacci number of spirals going in each direction.
Whoa.
There's either 5 in one direction and 8 the other. There's 8 in one direction and 13 the other. There's 13 in one direction and 21 the other.
Wow.
There's almost always going to be that. Now,
crazy.
If there is this other thing is they're called Lucas numbers. And remember I said we're not really going to get into it.
George.
Still not going to get into our George Lucas numbers.
Okay.
There. But if you did find 7, like what they talked about in this video on the, as they put it, pine cone, which is actually a Norway spruce cone, if you look at them, you will also notice that there will be the same number per that sequence. So the Lucas numbers, it essentially goes instead of 0 to 1, they go 0 to 2. Then everything else is added up exactly the same.
Okay.
So you then find, if it's 7, then it'll be the same number that's next to it in that sequence going the opposite direction.
Okay.
I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
Interesting.
But that is just one other level that people have noticed about how these spirals are not just like, wow, that's fun, that's beautiful. The mathematics of it go just backwards and forwards, inside and out.
That's crazy. There's a lot of that in nature.
There is, but this is like the one thing that seems to be ubiquitous.
Yeah.
And not ubiquitous in like, oh, well, we're all carbon based, so we all kind of do the same thing. This is like beyond that. This is something that people are like using energetics and mathematics and morphology and genetics, like all this crazy stuff to be like, why does this happen?
Yeah.
But we see it everywhere. But in plants, it's very particularly apparent to us humans. And there, Alex, I can say no more.
We got to say a little more, Casey, because we got to give a review to this tree.
No,
it's true.
You're gonna make me go back on my word.
But we got to do that after a quick break, which will be exactly 1.64% of our podcast. Right after this, we'll be right back with Completely Arbortrary. Welcome back to Completely Arbortrary.
Yeah, is everyone's mind blown yet?
Or is your shit blown?
Yeah, sorry.
Casey, it's time to give a review to this tree, and here's how it works. We're going to give some final thoughts, and then give it a rating of 0 to 10 golden ratios of honor. As our resident expert, we'll begin with you.
See, it's even in our podcast.
Oh my God, it's happening already.
I can't believe this. Okay. I am really torn about our tree.
Wow.
I do love that every now and then, and I know you people out there are just so supportive, and I'm so happy that you still do, when I'm like, Alex, we're going to talk about a tree for 30 seconds, which is just my excuse to talk about this other wild thing.
Yeah.
Luckily, this tree is the one that really stands out for me because Patrick Breen, the curator of Oregon State Plants, said, here's a good way to ID these trees. You can find it anywhere, though. And I just think that is, like, it's such an interesting pattern, and I think it's so beautiful. And I love the cone for all the reasons that we've talked about when we talk about the cone. This is like, it's so quintessential, it's so gorgeous, it's striking, especially when you first see that brand new cone, it's just like brand new to the world. It cracks itself open.
Yeah.
And you're just like, wow.
That's nice.
Although this tree is so overplanted that I could just walk down the street and someone's like, I got a pine tree in my house. I'm like, first off, odds are it's not a pine, but if it is a pine, it's an Austrian black pine.
Yeah.
It is so ubiquitous that I'm just like over this tree entirely.
Okay.
I do like it when I see it. It's a comfort tree at this point.
Sure.
It's like I know exactly what it does. I've worked with it for so long. I know it backwards and forwards. At least that's what I feel like. It's like, oh, this has been my roommate for like 16 years. Yeah, I know him way more than you think you know him.
Please
Trust
take him.
me. So I'm like, a part of me, I just think it's a cool tree. Yeah. I like it, but I'm like, man, literally any other pine would be so much better, except for a Scots pine. Don't plant that one either.
Okay.
But at least Scots pine has some really beautiful orange bark. Yeah. I don't know. So I'm going to give it a 6.5.
All right.
And that's only because maybe at one point it was like an 8.5, but then every single year it's just dropped 1 point for 20 years. And I'm like, I don't want to see you anymore.
All right. Well, let's see. Austrian. I mean, I didn't know it by name, but I knew it when I looked it up. I thought, oh shit. Yeah. Anytime there's like a shrub, like a pine shrub, I feel like it's usually these.
No, it's Pinus mugo, a close relative, kind of, but a tree that grows in the same area.
Well, okay.
You're not wrong.
I mean, yeah, I've seen them a lot in landscaping, I think.
Yes, yeah, you have. I'm sure you have.
But yeah, I don't have any particular love for it. I think it's fine. All trees have value to me. And so for that sentiment, I'm giving it a 6.5.
We're congruent.
We lined up, Case.
Wow.
I was going to do some quick calculation.
Yeah, see, we never overlap except for the one time that we shouldn't overlap.
Here, let me just do it.
Yeah, I'm curious how you're going to calculate this and what you're calculated on.
You did 6.5?
I did 6.5.
And what is the number?
The ratio is 1.618.
Okay.
I mean, I could go on, but I won't.
I give it a 10.5.
That is not how that works, Alex.
I did 6.5 times 1.618.
I think you should. I don't know that you are applying that ratio correctly.
What's a ratio, by the way? All right, I'll give it a 6.5.
That's good. Okay, so we'll go with the 6.5. Next week, kids, we're going to talk about how to apply ratios.
That was our review of the Austrian black pine. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you liked it. Casey, it's time for our Completely Arbortrary AMA. And if you want to ask a question on the podcast, become a Treemium member at arbortrarypod.supercast.com. This week, we've got one from Taylor.
Hi, Taylor.
A new Cone Club member and listener. I've recently moved back to Raleigh, North Carolina.
Hey, I love Raleigh.
And we have been in the midst of the pollinating. A yellow film has covered everything for the last week or so.
Yeah.
And everyone's allergies have been acting up, including my cat's. My cat, Chai.
Oh, no.
Chai? You named your cat Chai?
That's adorable. I'm sorry that Chai's sneezing.
I lived in several places where allergies and pollen are still a thing, but have been wondering why it is so intense in North Carolina and the Triangle specifically. What do you think,
question.
Case?
That's a great question. So it is springtime, of course, so all the trees are flowering. So it might just be that you are in the midst of the perfect temperature situation where pollen is just going wild. So most of the time, the trees and the plants, grass is the big one that no one thinks about, but that's probably the biggest, worst one.
I've shared that fact with many people.
You have?
Yeah.
How'd they take it?
They probably don't give a shit.
Okay, yeah. Well,
It doesn't change their allergies.
They can't hear because their ears are so plugged. They're like, I don't care what it is you have to say.
Oh, it's grass. Cool.
Yeah. Well,
I don't feel any better.
I
Still
don't
sneezing.
feel any better. Yeah, well, I don't know. You know, it's at this point. So we've talked a lot about how much pollen comes in. You know, are we planting too many male trees, which is ridiculous? No, there's not too many male trees. There's any tree that is monoecious is throwing out as much pollen as it ever could. But essentially, there can be times where the sunshine is shining at the right time. There's enough water. It's the right cues in terms of the length of day and all these things to where all the plants are like, now. Some plants might do it a little earlier. Some plants tend to do it a little bit later. Sometimes right when they're getting going, a bunch of rain comes and kind of knocks everything down. So if you get the situation where it's a big, beautiful day, all the cues are there, all the plants start producing a bunch of pollen, there's no rain, there's not a lot of wind, then everything just kind of fills up and you're just sitting there in this like peak of this kind of pollen season. So
to hear that it's like coating the cars and shit.
Oh, yeah.
Like I don't think I've ever seen that.
Oh, man, you have just not looked close enough or parked underneath the right kinds of trees at the right time.
I guess I kind of have.
Yeah. I mean,
but not like, I'm imagining like a foot of snow.
Honestly, it is just sometimes the perfect situation. It's like a rogue wave, you know?
Sure.
Everything just happens to line up perfectly where you get this perfect set of conditions that create this massive, huge spike. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes it does. Sometimes trees go on big mast years. But in that area, particularly in Raleigh, they are famous for their oak trees. Now, oak trees are monoecious trees, so they have male and female flowers on there. So they produce a bunch of pollen. So it could be that just right now, all of these pollen-producing trees are just in stride in making things happen. But
good for them. Yeah,
I think it is not something that is too outrageous. And I think sometimes it feels like it is because there is that kind of peak, but it happens every single year.
Yeah.
If there's ever any fruit anywhere on literally anything, that is the response of the fertilization that happened earlier. So there's pollen all the time. Yeah. Just happens that way.
Too bad for people who are... For all of my misgivings, I have not an allergy to speak of, Casey.
Really?
Yeah.
I do often get seasonal allergies where if there's too much pollen, I will definitely sneeze.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I know people who like are bedridden this time of year.
Yeah, it really is super effective. It's essentially an autoimmune disease.
I guess what you mean is for not having allergies, I'm sort of like a superior being.
Yeah, I think you are. Yeah, I think
All right.
I think that's accurate, Alex.
I got him to say it.
Now that you've laid it out, it seems so clear.
Thanks, Taylor, for your question. Like I said, if you've got a question for the podcast or just want to join up on Treemium and support this little podcast that could, become a Treemium member. Arbortrarypod.supercast.com. That link is also in the bio of our Instagram. Casey, Clapp.
Yes, sir.
Nice job today.
Thank you very much.
I will be honest. I am ready for a nap.
Yes, I think that's very fair. I'm also ready for a nap.
And I'm going to make
that
happen.
It was pretty intense. I have one update before we leave.
Okay. What if I just said no?
Then I would stop.
Is that really?
No, I would still say it because
You would find a way to work it in.
Yeah, it's totally it's germane to our subject here, sir.
All right.
You should have chosen 6.18. That is the golden ratio of 10.
To 6.5?
No.
What's the golden ratio to 6.5?
Oh, to 6.5?
Yeah. So I was doing the golden ratio to your number.
I see. That's 4.017.
Okay, I was close.
Yeah.
Only 6 off.
I was trying to do the math in my head. I'm like, I'm pretty positive you just multiply it by 10 because that's how ratios work. But I wanted to check my math because I was like, am I just dumb or
is Alex dumb?
Which one of us cannot sort this out?
All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening to this episode of Completely Arbortrary. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Completely Arbortrary is hosted by Casey Clapp and Alex Crowson.
Our music is by Aves and the Mini Vandals, and our artwork is by Jillian Barthold.
To support the podcast and get rewards in return, become a Treemium member at arbitrarypod.supercast.com.
Thanks for listening.